We're going to break down David Peterson, Brooks Raley, Christian Scott, and Mr. Hudson's big day there for the Amazons, as well as the hitting. This is how the ball game ended for the Mets. This is not how the lineup began to start today's game. So I would just like to reiterate that to each and every one of you. These are live automated. I'll come back to this once we break it down more in great depth. But this is how the ball game ended, as the Mets had 14 hits to the Cardinals, just measly 3 in this latest spring training matchup. Hit that like and subscribe button on your way in, everybody. I greatly appreciate that. A lot of key topics and notes to get into in Metsland in this one. And then we will also have another video that I'll be dropping for you guys probably early tomorrow, if not later on towards the night today, but probably tomorrow, given the fact that the Mets have an off day tomorrow. More content dropping for you guys then, if not later. I'll also be recording back in studio there for the New York Post and their sports segments covering the New York Mets there for Straight Outta Flushing and myself. So be on the lookout, as we will have more content dropping from Manhattan in studio tomorrow at some point in the evening for each and every one of you, and more content dropping in the Bleacher Report app as well, where we cover the Mets 3 times at minimum a week, if not more, that you guys will see my fun Mets content. I will be doing MLB-wide topics with them throughout the course of the year as well. So thank you guys for chiming in. Let's get a roll call to everyone for chiming in the live show, and then let's get right to our key topics and Metsland, which is the Mets taking down the Cardinals in this spring recap 6-1. We got a donation in the chat. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. Thanks for going live. It's been getting me through. Oh, of course, my guy. Happy to have you in here. Thank you kindly, not only for being an amazing member, but for the donation. It really does mean a lot. I told you guys, I promised you guys last week, starting this week, weekly live streams would be back. And they may very well be close to daily now, from now until opening day. It might not be exactly every day as we have done in previous years, but given the fact of how my workflow is now starting to change, working for the Post and doing other things, I do want to make sure that I'm not burning myself out too much. And now we have a perfect balance where there's a lot of perfectly timed games that we'll get into. And then as we get closer to opening day, we will for certain be in the true thick of it of a grind, giving you guys probably 2 forms of content, if not 3+ on an every single day basis. So make sure you guys are strapped in and ready for the ride here on WardyNYM. We got JTB. How we doing, my guy? We got Rocket Man in the chat. How are you? We got Brennan. How are you? We're going to talk plenty on Christian Scott. Absolutely. Mike DR. We got Brandon. We got Michael, Daniel, all you guys. Thank you guys kindly for smashing those buttons on your way, and I appreciate it. Now let's go ahead and break down the latest in Metsland. So as we stated, the Mets did take down the Cardinals 6-1 today. And how did they do it? Well, this was the Mets starting lineup today, which is very encouraging, regardless of having no Juan Soto and regardless of having guys like no Noah McLean or Clay Holmes, who have been doing a fantastic job representing Team USA. McLean will be towing the rubber against Team Italy tonight for his WBC debut. I'm anxious, but I'm giddy. I'm excited. We'll break down McLean's outing later on tonight, if not tomorrow. That's the main reason why I may push it until tomorrow in the AM to drop our next video, because I want to see how McLean does for each and every one of you to break down thoroughly. But this was the Mets today. It was good. Marcus Semien in the 1 spot, batting leadoff at second base. And the 2 hole was Jorge Polanco getting a good amount of reps at first base today. How did he fare? Well, we'll get into that shortly. Bo Bichette had himself a nice strong day at third base, commanding the hot corner, batting third. Brett Baty in right field getting the start today. I have a lot to say about the hitman. We have Francisco Alvarez, who batted 5th there at catcher. Jose Rojas at DH for the Mets, batting 6th. Christian Pache in center field, batting 7th. AJ Ewing, the high-flying prospect that is absolutely going to impact the Mets as soon as the season. He was batting 8th in left field. And Jackson Clough gained an opportunity at shortstop as he, along with Vidal Brujan and Christian Arroyo and Gray Kessinger, before he went down with injury this spring training, unfortunately, all guys that were signed as lower-level moves for the Mets, fringe MLB players competing for a spot as a backup infielder. So as we get into the offensive standouts, everybody, let's go ahead and deep dive exactly that, because we have a lot to say on the pitching. I'm excited to get into the pitching, headlined by David Peterson, who got today's start, but it's the offense that really prevailed. And let's begin again with the guy that's on the thumbnail, which is maybe why exactly you clicked on this live stream or are watching on replay. Dave Kaplitz, great memory. Happy to have you in here as well. Appreciate you, Dave. I'll get to the P.O. Box soon. I pinky promise. Ethan, how we doing, baby? Let's talk Jorge Polanco, okay? Very impressed with what I saw with Jorge Polanco today, first and foremost, as not only a Mets fan, but as someone who's really going to be more of an analyst this year than ever before, as an on-field and clubhouse reporter for the New York Mets for select games, covering them for the Post. I can tell you firsthand that, what we saw with Polanco, not only with his backfield work, in which he was doing a very good job when I was there in Port St. Lucie at Clover Park, watching there, seeing how they were doing in spring training for my very eyes, seeing how Polanco is working on those first base reps. Obviously, he has a lot more work to do, and I'm not saying that he looks like the best thing since sliced bread at the position, but what I am saying is that there were far from concerns regarding Jorge Polanco's both defensive and offensive ability and their spring training matchup today. And what made it even better is that Polanco, as we know, who batted 800 or higher on the OPS from both sides of the plate last year as a veteran switch hitter for the Seattle Mariners, took Jared Schuster deep that you guys saw. Jared Schuster has been in the league for a little bit now. Former Atlanta Brave, if I'm not mistaken. He gave up 4 runs across 3 innings and 7 hits for the Mets, including a bomb given up to, yes, Jorge Polanco, smacking his first spring training home run of the season. But that's not where Polanco stopped. He had a multi-hit game for the New York Mets today, as he would end up 2 for 2 with a home run and 2 runs scored. Polanco batting .333 with an over 1,100 OPS to begin spring training. Great to see Polanco get off to this kind of start. Also, as impressive as that home run was that he pulled to left, batting from the right side, I'm equally, if not more, impressed from what we saw from Polanco from the first base standpoint, okay? And I would love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. JTV, thank you for the kind words regarding the hat. Appreciate that. We got our guy Eddie, great member of the chat. How we doing, baby? Happy to have you in here. Robert Martinez, how are you from Florida? Love to hear that. I know you're enjoying the weather. Us on the East Coast, I'm in Pennsylvania, and it's like north of 70 degrees out and sunny. I can't wait to go on a walk with the kiddo after I do this live show. What a great day it is here in Metsland as a fan, as not only the Mets took down the Cardinals 6-1, but Jorge Polanco again did his thing on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. To expand beyond Polanco, again, there were a lot of other offensive standouts in today's matchup. Another one was most certainly Brett the Hitman Baty, okay? Brett Baty, too, who I'm very excited to rave over not only his offensive but defensive abilities in today's matchup against the Cardinals. Let's start here with the offense for the Hitman, as Brett Baty did what Carson Bench did this past day that we highlighted in content. Loving Carson Bench. It's not a matter of if, but when he will be the Mets starting right fielder. Right now, looks like it'll be opening day, March 26, 2026. But here's the thing. Does Brett Baty have something to say about that? As Baty gets the start in right field today, trying to make a name for himself, which he tends to do every single spring. So it's far from shocking to see Baty step up every spring, in which he's doing yet again. The Hitman today had himself multiple hits for Brett Baty, including driving in a pair of runs that we saw going oppo with a single, if not more. A run scored. Brett Baty's batting .462 with a just under 1,300 OPS so far this spring. I'm going to go on a limb and say that he's doing something right. So very happy to see that from our guy and Brett Baty. You guys let me know your thoughts on Brett, because it's one thing to perform offensively the way that Baty can, including getting hits lefty without a problem today. But it's more impressive to see a guy like him commanding right field for the first time since going back to his time in the minor leagues for the most part, and he's handling it without a problem. Made a gorgeous sliding catch and right that you guys have seen in the compilation of highlights that you guys can see beside me. Brett Baty is going to be a gamer this year for the New York Mets. Listen, I was in favor of trading him at the right price. Other than that, I did not want to see Baty go. I'm happy he's here. I know how valuable he is, and I know that when having the right mentality, the way that he does and the way that he approaches this Swiss Army knife of a position for the Mets, filling the shoes of veteran Jeff McNeil for the past number of years, I think he's going to handle this in stride. And whether it's getting some reps in right field, maybe because Benj underwhelms or Talkman, it's hard to believe that, but let's play devil's advocate for a second. Let's just say the hypothetical comes to fruition. Baty will get some opportunities in right field like what you see there, but it's first base that I'm really looking at, where I think Baty's going to be able to run away with this a bit along with Polanco, because as we have stated time and time again, Jorge Polanco is expected to get a healthy amount of reps at DH this year, per Mets skipper Carlos Mendoza. So who are you going to put at first base? Well, you have Mark Vientos, you have Brett Baty. Those are essentially your 1A and 1B options in that position. And as I've broken down not only with my good friend Dexter Henry and co-host of the New York Post Straight Out Flushing Mets podcast, new episode for us dropped yesterday on the New York Post Sports YouTube channel that you can check out. We'll have more content dropping for them in the next 24 to 48 hours with yours truly hosting. Excited to get into that. But expand more on this when we talk again about these first base options. I said it there, I'll say it again. I really do think that this is going to be Brett Baty's job to lose between himself and Vientos. Not that Mark can't perform, not that he can't prove himself. Obviously, he's not having a deep run with Team Nicaragua in the WBC this year, right? So what can he do when he's back in Mets camp? Just put the bat on the ball. You're a bat-first player. That's what's gotten you to the major leagues. It's always been about the bat before it's been about the defense with Mark Vientos, and it needs to stay that way, including his ability to hit the baseball plenty as soon as he gets back to Mets camp. The only way to really best a guy like Baty in this kind of competition is to make the most of your opportunities in the meantime. Can Vientos do that? Will he do that? Only time will tell. But if I'm a betting man right now, naturally I'm going to be favoring Brett Baty, who's already dominated to begin spring like he has done each of the past 3.5 years, but also has shown great defensive ability and versatility, whether it's at first, right, second base. Even if you need him at short or third, Brett Baty, outside of catcher or pitching, he can pretty much do it all. So I'm excited to see more of Brett Baty, the hitman, as I love to call him, provide more of this great defensive and offensive upside throughout spring. And listen, Carlos Mendoza talked about it this past offseason. There's a great belief that he could get 500 play appearances this year, if not more. How can that happen? It's by Baty just taking advantage of every opportunity given to him. He's done it in the past. Why can't he do it again? Especially now while the Mets are not really relying on him to be the guy the way that they have tried to rely on him to be the guy the past calendar year plus at the hot corner position after initially entering camp of 2025 with the expectation that maybe Mark Vientos would still be the best between the two there given his 2024 run. That fell short for Mark in the first half. Baty gets caught up, makes the most of it, gets sent down, gets caught up again, and the rest is history. Dominates in the second half for the New York Mets. We'll talk more on Baty in content tomorrow because I don't want to spoil too much, but I think you catch my drift by now. I like Brett Baty, and I do think that he will bring quite the value to the New York Mets in the 2026 season. You guys let me know your thoughts about all that. Brandon, thank you for the kind words. I really do appreciate that and all of your support. Thank you kindly. Seriously. We got Jose B in the chat. How we doing, baby? God bless you and your family. We got Joe. Joe Mar Gonzalez? Okay, I think I got it. There we go. We got Broke Shaver. How we doing in the chat? All you guys chopping in live on a replay. Smack that like and subscribe button in case you haven't already. As we continue to break down the other offensive standouts, and Owen, I love you back. Trust me, I do. Let's get into the others outside of the following here in Jorge Polanco and Brett Baty today. Because as we continue talking about offensive standouts, let's get into a player that I raved about in yesterday's content, have raved about him what feels like every other day on average since camp has started. And I feel like he's going to be the exact player that I rave about every single day in the minor leagues like I did with Carson Bench last year until he makes his major league debut. Folks, let's have our latest AJ Ewing segment, shall we? AJ, oh my goodness gracious, this kid is just so much fun to watch, okay? We've seen it, I've talked about it, and I'll say it again. AJ Ewing is exactly why you are not going to give a rat's you-know-what about trading Jet Williams. He's exactly why you are going to be amped up when you see a high flyer that can steal bases better than anyone else in the organization, comfortably dominate, grinding out at-bats at the major league level. Now, is AJ going to dominate from the start? I'm not saying that is what's going to happen here with him. I anticipate AJ Ewing will begin the year in AAA Syracuse and go on from there. The same way that Nick Morabito will be there and the same way that Chris Suero is expected to be there. What do these three prospects have in common? They have all been early standouts this spring for rightful reasons. Suero, the Bronx native, can play catcher, left, first base. What can he play? Then you have Morabito, a tremendous speed demon in the outfield, great defensive range, good bat-to-ball skills, and will be repping Team Italy, including tonight there against McLean and Holmes for Team USA. But AJ Ewing, the man who stole 70-plus bases last year in the minor leagues, the man who was always hitting the ball so well, hitting for around 300 if not higher, while slugging for a very respectable rate there in the 400-plus range, going gap to gap, spreading the baseball all over the place. AJ Ewing has now quickly established himself as more of a household prospect name, is no longer overshadowed by another top prospect in which they profiled eerily similar as infield and outfield options, that being in Jet Williams. So let me make clear, none of this is at all a slight to Jet. This is just a heavy credit to AJ, that AJ has played so well that he has directly run in hand as to why the Mets have the comfortability of trading Jet Williams in the first place. If AJ Ewing does not have the breakout that he did this past calendar year in the minor leagues, I promise you the Mets are more stubborn on trading Jet Williams. I really do feel that way, because it's not as much of a logjam as what it ultimately became between him blossoming, Nick Morabito continuing to look very rock solid in the minor leagues, and now having Jet Williams in the fold. Naturally, one of them was going to go. It wasn't AJ, it wasn't Morabito who got protected in the Rule 5 draft. It was, yes, Jet Williams. So now AJ Ewing, who has looked so damn good so far this spring, from what I've seen with the eye test in person to what we have seen at home, this kid has truly been a high flyer, and I'm loving every aspect of it. He won 1 for 2 today, and of course, he had himself a double into the gap that we love. He's batting .375 this spring with over 1,000 OPS. And the reason why this is a big deal is because AJ Ewing has had a healthy amount of games so far this spring that he's played and won. And two, what he's doing is very much a continuation of what he did in the minor leagues last year. This isn't like, oh my God, this anomaly of a player, this anomaly of a performance rather came out of nowhere. No, this is something that you should expect with AJ Ewing, because he was doing this for months on end last year. So it's not any more of a question. Is AJ Ewing going to make the New York Mets at some point this year? 1,000% yes. There isn't a single doubt in my mind that this kid is not impacting the New York Mets, potentially even at some point in the first half. I'm so confident. I firmly believe that he's going to play his way to this team. I believe that with one hiccup of an injury, with one inconsistency, AJ Ewing is going to be knocking on the door so fast, the Mets would be foolish not to call him up at some point this calendar year. When I said calendar year before, I included that potentially seeping into 2027. No, I retract that belief. I now stand firmly on the notion that AJ Ewing will impact this Mets team, even if it's just to a small degree. He will make his major league debut at minimum here in 2026. The kid's legit. He is not only the future, but he might just be the now. Now let's just wait and see how long of a leash the Mets give him the minors continued before ultimately giving him the call for this major league roster. So far, so great. AJ Ewing, take a bow, my friend. As we continue on from there, let's get into more offensive standouts in this matchup. And the other one that I'm so excited to break down, that I will expand on this in tomorrow's content for each and every one of you, but let's talk briefly here. It is El Troll and Francisco Alvarez. You know how Alvy has that red tattoo right around here on his neck saying that he is the best? Today is a prime example of exactly why that was a valid tattoo. Francisco Alvarez gunning out a runner earlier in this ball game without a problem. You think you're going to run on Alvy? Okay, you schmuck. Good luck. I don't care if it's spring training. I don't care if you're trying to make a name for yourself. While I can respect that, you should also respect the cannon that's attached to the right side of Francisco Alvarez. You saw Alvy not only throw out that runner, but it's what he did with the bat that made it so much better. Over 110 off the bat, 439 feet dead center. Francisco Alvarez smoking a piss missile of a bomb, driving in a pair. He had a 2-for-3 day with a run scored. And what do we see today for Mr. Francisco Alvarez? We see a .545 average and a roughly 1,500 OPS this spring. A healthy, a dynamic, a power hitting, but more of a veteran Francisco Alvarez versus the true free swinger that was him in 2022. This New York Mets team may just have a weapon in their arsenal of the depth of their lineup that can take them to a completely other level. I said yesterday on Bleacher Report that you guys can check out. Go in the Bleacher Report app right now, type Mets, scroll down. You're going to see the schmuck's face right there breaking down Robert as the Mets' biggest wild card. The floor versus ceiling is so pronounced from a player like him, but I could rightfully argue, and I think you could rightfully argue, that after Robert, who has the biggest floor versus ceiling gap on this roster right now, it might just be Francisco Alvarez, and here's why. Alvy's a kid who at age 21 or so smacked 20 or so home runs for you and provided elite defense. Then back-to-back years of dealing with ailment, dealing with inconsistencies, just not looking his best. And then 2025, more of that. You get sent down, you get called up, and you look the best you've ever looked. A better plate approach than even with this 20-plus home run rookie season. Francisco Alvarez is still only like, 24 or so? He's still younger than most catchers when they make their debut. Again, Alvy's value is so immense to this ball club, but the idea that this could finally be the season that he starts to really connect the dots and put it all together. You think about, how do the Mets compensate the loss of the power that is Pete Alonso being a Baltimore Oriole? Well, outside of the Jorge Polanco's bringing more stability at DH than years past, and outside of Bo Bichette being hopefully a lock to give you at least 20 home runs, Marcus Semien, I could see him heading around anywhere from 17 to tops 20 this year, maybe even more if things really go right for him. You think of Brett Baty's value too, but Francisco Alvarez, if Alvy goes back to being a 20 to 30 home run hitter, which we all know he can and has the capability of doing so, that power is what literally drove him to becoming a top IFA prospect signed by the Mets at age 16 out of Venezuela. I am inclined to believe that this New York Mets lineup can look not only as deep as ever, but as quality as ever. Just think about it, everybody. A dynamic, a strongly approached, offensively minded Francisco Alvarez at the plate with more of a sweet, compact, and tight swing to drive baseballs out of the ballpark, but also not free swing like a schmuck going slider down and away when he's looking like El Mago from any season up until last year, basically, even though he still did that last year. Alvarez batting in, say, the 8th or 9th spot for this Mets team, with Robert batting 6th or 7th, and then you add in every other dimension in this lineup. I'm telling you, it's not a matter of if this will work out, but how good it will. And I'm not only excited, but man, I am just praying that Alvy can stay healthy this year, guys. We've all been lauding for it. You've wanted it. I've wanted it. We're dying to see a Francisco Alvarez doing the best he possibly can. Let's see, Michael, how are you, my friend? He says, my nephew got a job at MLB Network first day yesterday in Secaucus. Michael, that's awesome. I love that. I do my commute in the city through Secaucus all the time, so I'm really happy to hear that, Michael. I know their facilities is right there, actually. Their studio's not far from the Secaucus train station. Michael, question for you. One, congratulations to your nephew on that role. Secondly, what is your nephew doing there? Is he working behind the scenes? Is he a on-air talent? What is he doing? I would love to hear that. Is he a statistician? Like, what is his role with MLB Network? I would love to hear that. I know my guy Anthony Recker is going to meet him soon enough if he hasn't already. And pardon me if you guys don't know Anthony Recker, former Mets catcher, good buddy of mine. We used to do a Mets podcast here on the platform going back to the 2022 and then first half of 2023 season. Unfortunately, that 2023 season really threw a wrench in everything, and it just made it so difficult with our conflicting schedules of different time zones with our third host, Joe, as well, to try to make it work. So unfortunately, that had to come to an end. But now we're doing Dexter Henry, straight out of Flushing, official Mets podcast for the Post. You're going to get inside access all season long, thanks to yours truly. I'm not complaining. Let's put it that way. I'm very happy with where things are at right now. But enough of my little side tangents per usual. Those were the key offensive standouts in this matchup, everybody. But to conclude the Mets offense, let's wrap up how the ballgame ended for them. Again, because Marcus Semien went 0 for 3 in this matchup. He hasn't done anything too crazy this spring, but he also hasn't been a liability either. Austin Barnes came in after him at catcher and went 0 for 2. Barnes is still batting .286 with a just under 900 OPS this spring. Jacob Reimer came in for Jorge Polanco from first base to third base for the final pair of at-bats. Did have a double, a run scored, and that is now Reimer with a just under 800 OPS this spring. Not too shabby for the Mets third base breakout in the minors last year. Bo Bichette had himself a solid 1 for 2 day with his spinning play at third base, which we love to see, including a walk. And if I didn't talk about that Bichette play yet again, to all the fans with half a brain cell who said that Bichette would not stand a chance at third, I understand that play was closer to short than it was third base because he played in on it still. Great spinning play by Bichette in the highlights I've been showing you guys in this live stream so far of him getting that throw to first without a problem. After Bo exited the ballgame, Ji-Hwan Bae came in and had himself a day. He went 2 for 2 in center field with a triple that drove in a run at .267 average and .856 OPS for the veteran outfielder. Brett Baty and right, we talked about him. He had himself a great game today, Baty, with the pair of RBIs and the 2 hits. A run scored. Corey Collins went over 2 at first base, who came in after the fact for him. Francisco Alvarez, El Tro, we just discussed, 2 for 3 with the 2 RBIs. Wyatt Young at second base, who's known for his very good high contact ability, and 2 years ago really burst on the scene in the Mets farm. Last year had a bit of an up-down year that we saw fluctuating his usage if he's in the top or the bottom of the lineup as well. And Young did have himself a hit today, so nice to see. Josh Rojas continues to do literally nothing this spring. I don't know why the Mets give this guy any at-bats or any reps whatsoever. He hasn't looked good defensively at first, nor has he looked good when he's got his consistent at-bats at DH. It really doesn't make much sense to me, but it feels like every spring there's always at least one player that gets just a stupid amount of playing time, and you're like, what is the point? This is not a player that's going to be impacting this team this year. It doesn't make sense. The Mets have their reasons. I understand that, but from what I see, it doesn't add up. Christian Pache in center field had himself an 0-for-3 day. He's cooled off a little bit since being red hot for the Mets, but he's still batting .474 with a 1,200 or so OPS, so not bad. John Bay, we know that last name, can kick in some PTSD to some Mets fans for sure. In right field, and he did not record a hit, didn't have an at-bat. AJ Ewing went 0-for-1 with a double that we saw. 1 for 2. I don't know why I said 0-for-1. And batting .375 with just over 1,000 OPS. Simone Juan, former Mets top IFA prospect for about 3 years ago now. Juan went 0-for-1 in this one with a strikeout. Jackson Clough 1-for-2 at shortstop with a run scored. And Kevin, I'm going to butcher his last name, came in after the fact and went 1-for-1. That's what you got there on the offensive end, everybody. Now let's talk here on the pitching end in this matchup, because the pitching starts here with Mr. David Peterson. Great game for David today, who did what he needed to do, was as advertised for the Mets veteran southpaw. And listen, the Mets need more value out of David Peterson this year if he's not getting traded or going anywhere, because he fell off a cliff in the second half last year. You know, he went a calendar year from returning from hip surgery that delayed his start to 2024 until June. But from June 2024 to, June 2025, a calendar year, David Peterson was the most reliable starter in this Mets rotation. From June to the remainder of last season, he was dog water. Did not provide the length, was clearly gassed out, handling the most innings he's ever pitched in his career, and he just couldn't handle it. That was the result. 4 innings, 1 earned run, 2 hits, 0 walks, 3 strikeouts for Peterson, who threw the 4-seam 35% of the time that we saw sitting right around 91. The slider 21%, sitting 85. Sinker 21%, sitting 91. Changeup 15% right around 84. And curveball 8% right around 78. How did he fare when we look at everything against lefties versus righties? Not bad in this matchup that we saw. He had a 50% rate there that we saw with this slider in his usage facing the left-handers versus the right-handers, which makes a lot of sense because naturally you don't want him to be serving up a meatball to righties down central and then see ya. It's 400 feet and it's out of here. But David Peterson did his job today. We're never going to complain about that, and I look forward to seeing more of a Peterson that can stay along these lines of consistency this spring. Albeit I understand you take these numbers with a grain of salt. Never a bad thing to see positive performance from any player, no matter the circumstance of the baseball game. Now, going on from one grizzled veteran of a lefty, let's go on to an even bigger grizzled veteran of lefty. And when I say big, I don't mean in stature, but rather in how long they've been around the game. And that's Brooks Raley. Brooks Raley comes in, pitches an easy 1-2-3 inning for the Mets, has the sweeper, the changeup, the cutter, and the sinker all working as advertised, and was only around a half-mile-per-hour down across the board on his pitches, so right where you want him to be at March 10th when you still have multiple weeks until the season begins. Christian Scott, everybody, that was the key standout that we're going to get into in a second, but let's talk briefly on Brian Hudson, who had a pair of strikeouts for the Mets, the towering 6'8" lefty. I mean, the Mets had 3 of their 4 pitchers were lefties today, and 2 of the 4 were big boy lefties. Peterson's a big boy, well over 6 foot. Hudson's even bigger. 1 inning, 2 strikeouts for Brian Hudson, who had the 4-seam sitting right around 93, which is notable because this is almost 3 miles per hour higher than his 4-seam fastball average a year ago. Very important to acknowledge because I clearly went in hand with his success today, and we'll be paying more attention to that with his velocity because Brian Hudson did not have a good 2025, had a very good 2024 with the Brewers, however. His sweeper, which he threw 31% of the time in this one, he sat right around 80, which was very much on par with last year. But the key note today, 4-seam fastball was sitting 93 and probably top 95 or so. More of what you would love to see from a Brian Hudson, taking more advantage of that towering frame at 6'8". If you're that big of a southpaw, you should be throwing gas and not being a soft tosser. He may inevitably fall more in the soft tosser category should that be the case, but regardless, I'm encouraged with what I saw from him. But guys, undoubtedly the biggest story pitching today, and we're going to expand more on this in tomorrow's content for you as well, is Christian Scott's brilliant outing. 3 innings, 1 hit allowed, four walks, 4 strikeouts. So even with Christian Scott walking everybody and their mother, it didn't matter. And here's the thing, Christian Scott is working on his arsenal. I don't care too much about the walk rates in spring training if you're specifically working on usage of certain pitches. The fact that he not only managed to get out of every single jam he was in, think about it, he allowed 5 guys to get on base in the 3-inning span and no one scored. Very impressive job by Christian Scott with his put-out pitches today. Listen, you have the 4-seam fastball that we saw look strong. Sat 95 today. Top at 97, 98. That's what you want from Christian Scott. The slider, which he threw 23% of the time, sat right around 89. That was also up. The sweeper and splitter were down in velo while the 4-seam and slider were up, interestingly enough. The sweeper, which he threw 19% of the time, was sitting right around 81, and the splitter was just at 6% of the time, right around 82. Again, Christian Scott has all the makings of being a weapon for the New York Mets as soon as this season. There's a reason why he was so heralded and coveted coming out of Florida, and then ultimately with the New York Mets in 2024 prior to his call-up. Now Scott rejuvenated and healthy, fully back from that Tommy John reconstructive surgery. He's looking to bring his best value yet to this New York Mets roster, and I'm excited to see not only what he's going to do this year, but I'm curious to see how he does in compare and contrast with a Jonathan or a Jack Weniger, a Jonathan Santucci, the other youngsters in this Mets farm right now, trying to establish themselves at the major league level as soon as the season. We're going to talk more on Tom plenty in tomorrow's content as well, everybody. I'm aware of the status of him and where he's expected to begin the upcoming season. So we're going to touch on that all, I pinky promise. Don't you guys worry. So there is a lot of logical reasoning as to why the Mets are making all the decisions that they are right now. So if you guys have not been paying attention, please just make sure you're doing exactly that, because there's been a lot of good going on right now. And listen, as I mentioned, wins and losses do not matter in spring training, but the Mets have been doing at least something positive to this point, because they are what? I think they're 5 or 6 games above 500, or maybe I'm giving them a little bit more credit than they deserve at the moment. They were, I'm trying to think, what were they? Yeah, they're 9-5 now, so not bad. So 4 games above 500 for the New York Mets this spring. Still have a couple weeks left of play in the spring, as we are well aware of. And then when spring training has wrapped up and we get opening day in this season rolling, baby, we are going to have so much insane coverage, guys. Like I said, you're going to be getting player interviews from yours truly. I'll be having quotes specifically from the players I'll be able to relay for you guys pretty much every single week on the platform, and for the New York Post there on their platforms and socials. We're going to be pumping out content in just ways that you haven't seen me do before, especially at this level, to this magnitude on this stage, which is saying a lot because I pump a lot of content. I've been doing it on the OG in this space, covering the Mets over the past, now entering my 6th season, and I really, really do appreciate the consistent following and support that we have had all year long, each and every year. But now this is the year, everybody, that, we have taken things to new heights before, but this is the year that we're really taking things to a level that is just, we're in the same class as all the big dogs, basically. When you think of just, major networks, corporations, or personalities that have been in the game for like decades, we're now starting to really dabble in that category, and I'm so excited to see what we can provide for each and every one of you. So I'd like to thank you all so much again for the endless support. Nick, the Met Fanatic, thank you so much for being a great supporter and member. Steve, great member. All you guys chiming in, thank you so much for hitting that like and subscribe on your way in and on your way out. But we're going to wrap up the live show now, everybody. So be on the lookout for more Mets content dropping, like I said, probably tomorrow, earlier in the AM, barring changes. If something changes, there's good reason for it. So until next time, everybody, have a great one. And as always, no matter what, let's go Mets.